Hola amigos, this is the Indus Savarkar at this side and welcome to my new channel. It's called Hindutvadi Book Reviews, where we review books. Specifically, we review books through a explicitly Hindutvadi or saffronized lens. I thought we would start this series off by a banger, a seminal work of Western philosophy and the philosophy of religion, specifically the philosophy of Christianity. I thought we'd start this off by the man, the myth, the legend. Let me just get my stuff straight. Fredrick Nietzsche. Fredrick Nietzsche, for those of you who do not know, was a German philosopher. Specifically, he was a German philosopher who has been incredibly influential in history. He's one of the most influential philosophers to have ever existed. And he has written, well, to be honest, quite a number of books, probably in the dozens. And I've read all of them because I'm a huge Nietzsche nut and quite something of a Nietzschean myself. And I will probably make a video on how I see Nietzsche and Hindutva going together, because I think a lot of you will most likely not agree with that characterization. Anyway, we have with us the Antichrist. The Antichrist, and I'm using the Sun Age publication version here, was a book. This is probably one of the best books for those who want to understand Christianity. Specifically, those who want to understand people who were influenced by Christianity and how that influence then played into the Indian state. It is an extremely interesting book. It is probably the best demolition job that has been done on Christianity, Christian philosophy. And it's probably among the best books to read about that. So Nietzsche was an atheist, let's be very frank about this. And even though he did read about the Gita and the Upanishads, I don't think it really influenced him that much. But I don't think that's really for question, because he did not really comment on them that much, as far as I'm aware. The Antichrist is a pretty damn good book. I'm going to characterize the Antichrist into three different distinct sections. The first and foremost is his takedown of Christianity. Nietzsche theorizes that Christian morality developed as a kind of weakling defense. The weaklings, the masses who were oppressed by the pharaohs and the more powerful Ubermenches, as Nietzsche called them, created a common collective moral values, which we today call Christianity, which was to defend them, to defend the weak against the strong, and to therefore stand down and call the strong immoral, unchristian, and therefore to defend themselves against this onslaught of, well, attacks, which themselves, being extremely weak, could not take on in a physical form, but in a metaphorical form, they could take on, and they did take on. And that's probably the very I think this is an I don't know how to probably describe this, but this is probably among the best takedown on Christianity you can get, because when you understand how Christianity started off as a fuck this, I'm just going to take this off. When you understand how Christianity started off as a force which was made to weaken the whole of the strong pagan traditions on the majority of the European masses, and then it developed into this huge hegemon of a religion and then systematically wiped out those pagans' religions, you understand why this was the case. This was the case because from the start the Christians used their collective morality, their morality of weakness, their metaphoricization and worship of weakness in order to justify a moral superiority over the other pagan cultures. And when therefore they came into power, they were merciless in destroying the collective communitarian values of those cultures and then replacing it with Christianity and replacing and then using Christianity to colonize the masses, because at one point Europeans who had themselves, Christians who had themselves faced persecution in quotations by the Romans, became the dominant force in Europe and wiped out all pagan religions in Europe. They moved abroad. They moved to Asia. They moved to Africa, where they moved to America, where they systematically genocided the natives of those places and reinstated a Christian colonial structure, which would then turn those colonized masses, those former pagans, into slaves of the empire. And because they would turn into slaves of the empire, and they had inherited the worshipping of weakness, which was also present in Gandhi's case. Refer Jared Rao's Economic Ideas of Gandhi, but that's a totally different book. That it would, just because the pagan populations would become subservient to the Christian colonial project. And because they became subservient to the Christian colonial project, it became easier for the Christian colonizers to justify actions against them and to establish and rule over an already weakened mass whose tendency to rebel against foreign Abrahamic influences had been completely destroyed from the inside because their morality had been corrupted by Christian morality. And this is where we come into his second slide, which is the second insight into Christianity, which is the Christian slave morality. Nietzsche theorized that because, I told you before, because Christianity developed as a response to powerful people, it developed a morality which was formed on following the herd. And because it, now this to some extent has influenced and existed in all religions, but this was particularly severe in Christianity and particularly severe in colonies, because once Christian colonial hegemonic structures were established all over the colonial world, and the same Christian slave morality was imported into those people who had been once fierce independents. And because they got winded into this Christian colonial mentality, they became loyal servants and loyal slaves of the empire. And only very few people, only very few psychoanalysts like Fanon or Savarkar or even Bose kind of saw through that Christian colonial mindset and the Christian colonial veil which had fallen before the eyes of the colonized masses, and therefore using that Christian slave morality had essentially enslaved them both mentally and physically. And because the same Christian slave morality had become so entrenched in their own collective ideological structures that they could not possibly fight against the empire that they despised so much, and who was such strong. He was so strong in the socio-economic exploitation because the slave morality of the earlier Christian masses had been imported into them, and any philosophical drive for power and for power essentially, and specifically for fight against and the militarization of society and the strengthening of society, as Savarkar once said, Hinduize the politics, militarize the nation. That drive was ended through a selective process of breeding and inbreeding selective Christian slave morals among the wider masses to kill the philosophical basis for any sort of rebellion against the Christian colonial structure. And there are a lot of other ideas into this book as well. You can read it. It's not really that long, and you can read them by yourself. But this, I think, this is the most Hindutvadi analysis I can do of this, specifically the Christian slave morality and how it was imported into the colonized pagan masses, which was then used to justify their colonization and was internalized by the masses to stay in the line of the imperialist European project, is probably the best you get as a religious nationalist or as a civilizational nationalist analysis. And I would highly admire you if you were to read this book yourself. I will drop an Amazon link in the description, or you can find it for free. And yes, that's it for today. I will be back in future with hopefully The Will to Power or any other of Nietzsche's work. Thank you very much.